Hello. Just letting you guys know that Spider September is coming to a close this Saturday, September 28th, with 3 screenings of Spider. You'll be able to see Spider at the Hell's Half Mile Film and Music Festival in Bay City, Michigan, the Chicago Horror Film Festival in the Windy City, and the Festival of Darkness at the historic Redford Theater in Detroit, all in one day. Okay, horror fans, do you like monsters, gore, and behind-the-scenes looks at your favorite horror films? Then be sure to check out Fangoria, one of the premier brands in horror. Fangoria has been delivering quality magazines since 1979. Each collectible issue features exclusive articles about your favorite monsters, as well as up-and-coming terrors. A Fangoria subscription gets you the ultimate horror experience. I'm talking 4 quarterly issues, each 100 pages with subscriber-exclusive covers. This one coming up believe is uh Nightmare on Elm Street, which is perfect for the 40th anniversary of that film. You'll get early access to products and giveaways, gift codes, private community access, and more gruesome goodies. Be sure to check out the Fangoria store website for subscriptions and a bunch of cool merch. And while you're there, use promo code Would You Die Show for 20% off your entire order. That's right, 20% off your entire order. Applies to subscription and one-time orders, applies to the first subscription order only. Now, it's time to talk about everyone's favorite mean green mother from outer space.
Death has come to your little town, Sheriff.
Have you ever felt a knife cut through human flesh and scrape the bone beneath?
You're gonna need a bigger boat.
Be my victim.
You are all my children now.
Hello, my name is Austin Torres, and welcome to the Would You Die podcast, the show where we talk about our favorite horror monsters and villains. Today, I am joined by a world-class musician who has played in every setting imaginable, from football fields to concert halls to churches to even Skid Row. She is bringing her musical expertise to today's topic, the iconic horror musical Little Shop of Horrors. Please welcome my friend, Shannon Sheldrick.
Hey guys, should have brought my trumpet, Austin.
No, we don't need to get that nerdy.
There you go.
So some background, some lore. Shannon and I have been friends for a very long time. We were both in the
Almost 10
Spartan
years.
marching. No, not that long.
Almost 10 years.
No,
20
no.
2015.
Yeah, we met in 2015. That was like 3 years
Yeah.
ago.
Oh my gosh. When
But
I
yes,
was 12 and you were 7.
and when I was okay, that's not how math works. I was a very bright 7-year-old. But yeah, so some lore. We were in the Spartan marching band together. We both played the trumpet, and we've been friends ever since.
Yeah. Excited to be
So
here.
I'm excited for you to be on the show. You're not the first Spartan trumpet to be on this show.
No, I'm one of many.
Yes, I believe in nepotism, guys. And part of the reason why I wanted you on this for this particular episode is because, one, I've never got to talk about Little Shop of Horrors yet.
Gotta get it on there.
I know I
It's a
love
classic.
I love it. I love the movie. I love the musical. I love Audrey II.
It kind of worked out that this gig that I had recently was the pit orchestra for this musical, and then we were just talking about it one night,
Yeah.
and Austin was like, "Oh, all right, you're gonna be on my show," and I was like, "Am I? Okay."
I mean, you have podcast experience. You kind of help run a podcast yourself.
Yeah. So I'm actually on a music podcast, which fits pretty well. It's called BYO Beats, or Bring Your Own Beats. We talk about beats and beer mostly. Our whole structure is we work our way through a 6-pack and try a bunch of different IPAs and stuff that the other guys on the podcast pick. And then we interview musical guests from kind of all over. I'm in Pittsburgh, got a lot of Detroit people, Chicago, and now we have Wyoming. So one of our hosts moved to Wyoming. So more Spartans though on that podcast. So
More Spartans. Okay. I got to get my Spartan numbers up. We'll talk about how these worlds combined, but what is your relationship with horror, specifically horror movies?
Yeah, so my introduction to horror actually came kind of with Austin entering my life. I had seen a few horror movies before. I'm not very into gore, so I always just thought that I hated horror movies and I wanted to stay as far away from them as I possibly could. But I loved horror books, and I think that kind of paved the way for me because I'm always looking for murder mysteries and just spooky books and possession stuff like that. Love books like that. So I was already interested in that. And then I got to college and Austin invited me to this trumpet party where we watched Cabin in the Woods, which was hilarious because I thought that it was going to be a really scary, terrible movie, but it was just kind of hilarious. And then from then on, I continued to kind of find my way on my own. I do tend to like the kiddie horror stuff, which fits with Little Shop of Horrors. I don't know, like my roommate from COVID, Jenna, was really into the Conjuring universe. So we would watch all of those all day, every single day, like all of COVID. So I think I'm a little desensitized now, enough to where I do really enjoy it now.
That's where you want to be, where you no longer get the heebies or the jeebies, but you can appreciate like the art that's happening.
Yeah, yeah. I've actually like really been able to start truly enjoying it the past few years and love being scared. I love the mystery of horror and like the casualness that kind of happens in Little Shop of Horrors or I've been watching the Fallout TV show lately. Um
Okay.
I don't know if that's gonna count as horror, but it's pretty gory and like spooky. So yeah, I don't know. I kind of like that tone switch between like cutesy, but also everyone's dying everywhere. So
Yeah, I think Fallout covers a lot of different genres because there are like creatures and a lot of blood and guts in Fallout.
mhm.
Although I think it's a lot more varied than like a traditional horror.
Yeah, oh definitely. Yeah, I kind of like that mix.
Because there's a lot of action and
Mhm.
there's comedy and a lot of comedy and it's very much science fiction too.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I like that mix of things. Just the
Yeah,
intrigue.
it's a
Like,
lot of stuff.
yeah, like Silence of the Lambs, that one is
Very
more
different.
like, yeah, like that's more traditional horror, and I like that.
Even then, a lot of people don't think Silence of the Lambs is horror.
I could see that though, because it's more like psychological, a lot of it. I mean, there's only really one like super gory scene, right? Like,
Well, it's like it is a crime thriller too, but I do think it is pure horror because Hannibal Lecter is a scary dude. You are
mhm.
looking for a serial killer. I don't know about you, but serial killers are scary to
Yeah,
me. So, but I do recognize it has like that crime thriller element as well. And it's definitely a psychological horror, but it also has a little bit of slasher vibes.
yeah. Light slashers. Yeah, I like that. All the Halloween movies.
Mikey My My.
Um, Michael Mannheim. I watched a lot of that in college. I'm trying to think of more examples of what I do like. Um, Guillermo del Toro,
Sure.
like absolutely anything by that man. I love all those films.
He's a genius. We love him.
Yeah. There's Pan's Labyrinth, and then there's another one that's like the Victorian girl in the castle, and
Crimson Peak.
yes, that one was good. Yeah. So yeah, it was kind of funny when Austin first invited me on this podcast because I was like, I'm not really a horror fan in the same sense that the rest of the friend group is. But
Mhm.
when I was thinking about it more and more and trying to write down my thoughts of what I do and don't like, you guys had fully dragged me into it, I guess, at this point, because I think I'm right there with you for the most part.
And that's how it should be. But I also normally I let the guest pick the topic of the episode. That is the case 99.9% of the time.
Right.
It was not the case today because
True.
I really wanted to talk Little Shop of Horrors. And Shannon here, she just played in the pit orchestra for a production of Little Shop of Horrors. The stars are aligning to finally talk about Audrey II.
Right. Yeah, I'm not sure if I had told you before I did the gig that I was doing it, but you messaged me after I posted a picture of me with Audrey II on stage. You were like, "Wait, what are you doing? Like, that's so cool." One of my buddies from the Detroit area called me and said, "Hey, can you fill in? We don't have a trumpet guy for this." So drove back to Michigan for a couple weekends and played in the pit, and it was super fun. Super, super fun.
And for people who are might not know like the jargon, the
Mhm.
pit is short for the pit orchestra.
Yes. Hmm.
So she's not so Shannon's not like moshing in a pit. It's not that kind of pit. She's not throwing down to suddenly Seymour.
Not that night, no.
Not that night, to be
Right.
clear. Every other night, maybe.
Right, exactly. Well, the pit, if you haven't been to a like local show or just an in-person show in general, for musical theater, a pit orchestra is literally an orchestra in a pit, which is
Yep.
kind of metal. But they have this pit at the front, 12 to 15 feet deep, usually. Maybe that's a little too much, maybe like 10 to 12 feet, but it's usually chock full of people like me playing their instrument in this dark little tunnel. That is what we do to have live music at shows, which is still so, so important. We're kind of switching over to audio for a lot of things and just having canned music, but I think nothing can really beat having a pit orchestra there. So go and support your local shows and orchestras and musicals and plays and anything that's going to be in person. Just go out and see it because it's so, so cool. You just can't necessarily get the same effects on YouTube or something. So,
There's something really fun because, like, we're going to talk about the movie Little Shop of Horrors for
mhm,
sure. That
yes.
movie's fantastic.
Mhm.
But it's also fun to just go see a live production of it.
Yeah. Nothing can beat Audrey II in the movie, though. I will say, like,
Oh, the Levi Stubbs.
yeah, oh my gosh. Audrey II in the movie is just so perfect. And even though it was kind of a low budget film, they did a great job with making the plant move and talk. And I thought that was so cool.
Well, a fun fact for you is Little Shop of Horrors, the movie, is directed by Frank Oz,
Okay.
who he a lot of people will know his name as being the voice and the puppeteer behind Yoda from The Empire Strikes Back, and
Oh,
he's
really?
voiced Yoda this whole time. He's done a lot. Like he worked for Jim Henson. Jim Henson is the all-time great, the all-time goat of puppeteering.
Yeah.
The things that like he's able to do in the Muppet movie and like Labyrinth and the Dark Crystal just is mind-boggling.
Yeah.
And Frank Oz kind of learned from that, and that's why Audrey, I think, and with him directing the movie, that's why Audrey 2 looks so good. Because
That
like
makes sense.
yeah, like the design of the plant is so cool and um very like 1950s monster movie, but it has that 80s, like it's big and but it can move and it's like, and
Yeah,
I
it just
yeah,
like pops off the screen. It's so cool.
I think they actually because the puppet can only move so fast because it was
Mhm.
so big, they actually had Rick Moranis slow down his movements and they sped up the film.
That's cool. Those little details are
Yeah.
everything.
And I think only a master puppeteer uh will be able to know that because he knows that puppet so well. So even if a master puppeteer didn't direct the film, having a master puppeteer is needed on set so they could tell the director, "Hey, it also helps if you're directing and you are a master puppeteer."
Right. Yeah. Yeah, absolute legend. That makes so much sense with how that works. That's so cool. I want a whole documentary on how they just did the plant in the movie originally.
I that would be a fun doc, like little doc of horrors. How
Mhm.
they made it, how they founded. Um, but it is a fun musical. I've seen my high school did Little Shop of Horrors my freshman year, and I saw it,
Mhm.
and it was pretty cool.
It was really funny. Like, so when you're in the pit, especially like towards the back of the pit, like the trumpets normally are, you can't really see on stage because you're just kind of underneath this little shelf because they don't want you to like blast too much into the audience.
Unfortunate.
Yeah, so you can't see, and I couldn't see the staging, so I didn't really know what was going on stage a lot of the time. But it was really funny afterwards because I was chit-chatting with some of the tech people backstage
Mhm.
afterwards at the tech party, and they actually pulled out all of the different Audreys that they had made to like show me this is the little plant that we made, this is the puppet, this is the like teenage Audrey
Mhm.
II, whatever. And then the bigger plant that I took a picture with, I didn't know how they did the puppeteering stuff with it, but one of the girls actually got inside of the plant and was there the entire show. And she was just in there and she would like open up so that Audrey could talk and like eat people. So there was just like this whole backstage thing that people had no idea what was going on. And it was a lot of work getting all of the puppets to do what they needed to do.
That's awesome. I got a music question for you.
Yeah.
What is your favorite song from the musical? And what is your favorite song to play in the musical?
I really loved listening to Skid Row, the kind of like opening of
Mhm.
the whole thing, just because you're kind of getting introduced to all of the different characters. And it's kind of run by like the angel chorus in the background. They're kind of leading it, which I
Yeah.
think is just such a cool way to tell a story. And with kind of like the doo-wop, like early Motown vibe that this whole play is kind of centered around, I think it's just such a great opening. I think they did a great job with that. My favorite song to play, though, is definitely Feed Me or Get It.
Hmm.
That is where Audrey II is getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and it's getting too much for Seymour to just feed him. So he's just, feed me. And there's like a ton of bass on Feed Me. And it's really cool watching the conductor like work with Audrey II, who is literally, inside of the puppet, but communicating with the conductor, through the little hole that they can see through or whatever. Yeah, that was just so cool to me. Like the bass boosted feed me fits very well with the vibe of Audrey II.
That's cool. Feed Me is my favorite song from the musical. So I'm happy that it's your favorite song to play. Because to me, it's like very, because the whole musical has this Motown vibe, which
Mhm.
is funny because it's on Skid Row. It's like the opposite end of the country from Motown, but it still has that vibe musically. But like Feed Me has this like kind of like 50s rock, blues rock swing to
Yeah,
it.
yep. I was actually Googling it just to make sure that I had like all my terms correct
Mhm.
for like what I was talking about, but this is like kind of beginning Motown sound, but also it was described in a lot of places as like a rock show, just in
Yeah.
general, which is really heavy guitar for a lot of it, so that makes sense. And like the bass boosted everything. Boom, 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 boom. Yeah.
It's that one especially has like that rock spirit, whereas like a song like Somewhere That's Green
Hmm.
is very proto Disney Renaissance, I think.
Yeah, true.
Because the musical was written It's Alan Menken and Howard Ashman, and they did The Little Mermaid. I believe they did Beauty and the Beast. I think Howard Ashman died during production of Aladdin.
Okay. Hmm.
So, but for sure, Little Mermaid, and like
Were those the
Little
musical
Mermaid,
directors or the screen directors?
the musical
Okay.
directors.
Hmm.
They wrote the music for these, and I think there's a lot of parallels between Little Shop of Horrors and The Little Mermaid because they're both little.
There we go.
No, there's a real point. There's a real
Yeah,
point.
yeah.
I had to make that joke, but somewhere that's green from Little Shop of Horrors is kind of the same song as Part of Your World
Yeah,
from The
literally.
Little
Yeah.
Mermaid.
As soon as you said that, I was like, part of your world. Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. That's
Somewhere
funny.
that's green.
Somewhere that's good. They literally just copy and pasted. That's funny.
And it's like they're both like I want songs of
Mhm.
I want to be in where I'm not. Literally, the grass is greener on the other side kind of song.
Yeah.
Wanting a life that's better than the life you already have. That's the main, not Seymour. What's the girl's name?
Audrey?
Duh.
There's two
I
of
don't know
them.
how I forgot. Audrey II. Well, I'll never forget Audrey II. But yeah, who's the blonde again?
Oh my God.
So
Mhm.
I just yeah, yeah. I'd be safe from a zombie apocalypse because a zombie won't find brains up in here. But but yeah, Audrey. Audrey, does not want to be in Skid Row. And Audrey's a very interesting character because like she's dreaming of a better life,
Mhm.
but she doesn't think highly of herself and then just like goes after abusers like Steve Martin as the
Yeah.
dentist.
Hmm. Yeah, I think Audrey, one thing I like about horror in general is that often the genre itself will go after or like show very real issues and
Yeah.
it'll just go places that like traditional cinema won't. And I thought that it was really interesting how they like portrayed Audrey with like even though they kind of portrayed her as this little like frail, scared lady who's like maybe a little ditzy, like they really did a good job with making her like a very multifaceted character. Like she is very complex. I thought that was cool.
And I think she's a more interesting character than Seymour.
Yeah.
I think Seymour is pretty straightforward,
Hmm.
very simple, whereas Audrey on the surface seems straightforward, but I do agree. I think there's a lot of layers to Audrey that
Yeah.
the musical kind of brings out.
Yeah. I think that it was cool. And like I think the writers did a really good job with like when I first started like, watching Little Shop of Horrors when I was like a teenager or whatever, like
Mhm.
when you first read about it, you're like, oh my gosh, Seymour's like killing these people or feeding these people to a plant. But like every single person that they feed to the plant, other than spoiler alert, Audrey, at least in the one version, you want them to die so bad. Like Seymour's kind of a very passive character for the most part, but he's not like a bad dude. The people
Right.
that like Oren getting killed, the audience is cheering. And Mushnick's not the worst guy in the entire world, but he doesn't treat Seymour very well. And I don't know. So they created a sympathetic character with Seymour.
And it helps that Seymour doesn't actively kill anyone.
Right. Yeah, he's very passive.
He goes to kill the dentist, and then the dentist just offs himself with a broken laughing gas mask. And
Yeah.
then Mr. Mushnick just climbs into the plant.
Like he's kind of manipulated there, but Seymour doesn't touch him. So,
Right. Audrey
that
II
scene,
is the villain.
yeah, oh, definitely. I like how there's two versions of the ending too. Obviously, we're rooting for Seymour and Audrey and everyone on Skid Row, but also like the ending where the plants do just fucking take over the world. It's very fitting. I think it's hilarious. So
Because, like, Little Shop of Horrors is a scrappy indie musical.
yeah. Hmm.
And just everything about Little Shop of Horrors is scrappy. It's kind of like the ultimate underdog. Even
Yeah.
though now, not now, I think people kind of hail it as a classic, and it's the most iconic, at least one of the most iconic horror musicals in
Mhm.
competition with Sweeney Todd,
Right.
which I've actually never seen.
The
So
theater that I played Little Shop is doing Sweeney Todd in the spring, which
I
I
guess
thought
I
was
should go
funny.
see it.
Yeah.
I should probably see it at some point.
It's so
That's a
good.
very pop. I think that one is a contender for one of the great. I don't even have to see it to know it's one of the greats.
Yeah. Yeah,
Its
definitely.
reputation precedes it, and then Rocky Horror Picture Show, obviously.
Obviously. Yeah. And the thing is, the funny thing about all of that is that Rocky Horror and Little Shop are both like cult classics. And I really
Yeah,
like how I'm slowly becoming a cult classic junkie because I just think that there's so many little things about every single cult classic that is just so iconic. Like, there's actually, I'm in Pittsburgh and
mhm.
there's this, I've told you this before, but for the viewers, there's this little like indie theater right up the road from where I live, called Row House.
Yeah,
And they don't show any like newly formed movies or anything that's coming out recently. It's literally all cult films and like Miyazaki films, which is just exactly what I want 2 blocks from where I live. So it's been fun going there and just watching all of the cult films. Rocky Horror, Night of the Living Dead. I'm trying to think of a bunch of others. I don't know. We go there pretty often.
there's a theater in Detroit that I started going to, and it's kind of similar. Looking ahead, they're going to play A Nightmare on Elm Street.
Nice. Yeah.
I don't know. I think A Nightmare on Elm Street might transcend cult classic.
Yeah.
It's very popular. But they are going to play Little Shop of Horrors
Mm-hmm.
in October, and they're playing It Follows, which I think is a modern cult classic.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So there's a lot to look forward to. But yeah, I like theaters that do what our theaters do.
Yeah. I love that stuff. And like we had a videographer come in for some filming for my company that I work for. And I was just chit-chatting with him in the hallway while he was doing some like documentary work for us. It was so cool just talking to like a local artist after, being kind of new in town because he was telling me about Row House and like there is a horror movie scene here apparently. But yeah, like Row House played like Napoleon Dynamite a couple weeks ago and like The Room.
That's awesome. But yeah, there's something to be said about cult classics and how they kind of just because sometimes like a film like Little Shop of Horrors and Rocky Horror Picture Show, like they are cult classics, but I feel like they kind of transcended cult classic at the same time.
Yeah.
I feel like everyone knows, even if they haven't seen the Rocky Horror Picture Show, they'd be able to correctly identify that's a screenshot from
Yeah.
Rocky Horror Picture Show. They like, well, I feel like the Time Warp.
Yeah, everyone knows. Yeah, everyone
Everyone
knows.
knows that song. That song
Mhm.
definitely transcended it. And like Little
Yeah.
Shop of Horrors, I think people, I think the movie really helped the musical
Hmm.
because I think a lot of people know Audrey II.
Yeah. Mhm.
Audrey II is a very iconic villain.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the whole thing about cult classics is that the movie just becomes this thing that's like bigger than
Right.
just the movie and just kind of grows by itself. Like sometimes just without any marketing, which is really cool. Gunning for that to happen to Spider here. But
Thank you.
um yeah, so I love this kind of stuff and I was really grateful to be a part of one recently. Yeah, I hope they call me back for Sweeney Todd.
Yes. And like and going back to like the scrappy nature of Little Shop of Horrors, it kind of began Little Shop of Horrors began as like a 1960 like 70-minute Roger Corman film. It's black and
Okay.
white. It was made for like a s- cheap amount of money because they were making a different movie and then they had some leftover money from that, so they decided to make a whole other second movie with all the same sets and the same cast, and it has a young Jack Nicholson in it.
Okay. That's such a classic artist move. We have more
Yep.
money. Let's make another movie.
Yeah. And and Little Shop of Horrors just kind of spent a lot of its life as like a small Roger Corman film, Roger Corman being best known as like a indie horror producing, directing, like he did it all. Roger Corman passed away recently.
Mhm.
Um and he was like 97 or 98.
Yeah.
He was still making movies.
Hmm.
He was still producing and
The art keeps you alive, man.
yeah, it really does. It truly does. But he made Little Shop of Horrors in like either the late 50s or it might have been 1960. But
Mhm.
it was around that era. They made it for cheap and it just kind of became like a real indie cult, like
Yeah.
monster movie that at some point Howard Ashman saw, and that inspired him to make a musical, which, was Little Shop of Horrors.
Hmm.
And teamed up with Alan Menken for that. And then somehow, I don't know exactly how, but somehow, it got popular enough to where they made a small indie movie.
I love how that works in the art world, like in the music world and in cinema, like everyone just kind of inspiring each other and then like working together. It was reminding me
Yeah.
of like Rent turned into Tick Tick Boom, turned into, Glee or whatever. Like all this stuff just kind of leads one into another into another. It's cool.
Exactly. And I call Little Shop a movie. It's a small indie movie. Because I always think of it has that spirit, but I'm pretty sure Warner Brothers distributed it. So I don't know
True.
how indie the movie was, and not with that Audrey II puppet. It couldn't have been that indie,
Right.
but it does have that spirit of the musical, the musical is indie
Yeah.
for sure.
The Inception was indie for sure.
And it was like off Broadway. I don't think Little Shop of Horrors was ever on Broadway. I think it's always kind of been like off Broadway.
That could be true. I'm honestly not sure. It doesn't really seem like, I mean, musical theater people, you can totally tell me I'm wrong. It doesn't really seem like the type of show that would get picked up by Broadway.
I don't think it, and I'm not an expert in this at all, so I could just be full of it. But I don't ever see like national tours of it
Yeah.
in the way that we see Wicked
Mhm.
or West Side Story or Les Mis or the popular musicals.
Mhm.
With Little Shop of Horrors, I feel like it's always like a theater company
Mhm.
doing it themselves, our high school productions. Something
It's keeping
about it.
the
Yeah.
keeping the indie vibe, man. Keep it alive.
Well, horror as a genre, especially in film, usually is a bunch of scrappy filmmakers
It has to
because
be. Yeah.
it has to be.
Mhm.
Exactly. And you'll get big budget horror movies once in a while. Like
Mhm.
Halloween just had its Blumhouse Universal trilogy.
Right.
Um, Mike Flanagan's Doctor Sleep. Warner
Mhm.
Brothers put a lot of money into that film, and it was a great film. It's an epic, but it definitely had considerable resources. But for the most part, horror movies don't get the resources that say a Marvel film or a Star Wars film do. You know?
Yeah, and I think sometimes with that, like, I think it fits the vibe better sometimes, and it doesn't muddle the meaning. Like you're not getting caught up in what's it called, like CGI or
Hmm.
anything. Sometimes, I mean, it depends, but
Sure.
I think that that spirit. of it being a little more rough and tumble, getting there kind of helps the nature of the films sometimes.
And with like a horror movie, you'll get horror movies that have a bit more to play with, like A Quiet Place, Day One. That's a
Mhm.
big studio movie. The first Omen had 20th Century Fox, which is owned by Disney,
Right.
behind it. Alien Romulus is going to have a big push.
I'm so
Alien,
excited.
right? Me too. But like Alien Romulus is not a scrappy underdog.
Right. Yeah.
That is the full might of 20th century
Mhm.
with some of the might of Disney behind it.
Right.
But you get a movie like Longlegs,
Mhm.
which is a scrappy horror film with
Trending on TikTok right now. Yeah.
yeah, it's trending, and I'm like, this movie is trending. This like weird, not commercial at all,
Yeah.
but everyone's intrigued by it. And it's a good movie. I really liked it.
Yeah. I think it's really interesting being a musician and being a freelancer. You're a freelancer as well.
Mhm.
And like I work for a nonprofit, which is also we have a scrappy existence, so like
Yep.
begging for grants to keep running. But I have a lot of feelings about like I don't think that artists should have to inherently struggle, but that is how the world is set up. That's just how it is. And I think that artists and filmmakers and musicians and painters and anyone that you can think of that's in a creative field, we are scrappy people.
Yeah.
Like, we are so resilient in a world that loves our existence, but not enough to fund it, you know?
And they would rather replace us with robots.
Yeah. I don't know. There's a whole lot of feelings about all that, but we're on the same wavelength.
Because, like, a machine could never come up with the story of Little Shop of Horrors.
No.
It could never have a down on his luck kid who's just trying to make a better living for himself and his crush, working at a plant store, finding this mysterious plant from outer space, maybe?
Mhm. And also, like,
Yeah.
truth, just in general, truth is stranger than fiction is so real. And like artists putting that knowledge into their art is
hmm
so fun to see.
And then, like, a machine couldn't take that story and recontextualize it into a musical theater show.
True.
Eat the Rich,
Yes.
Audrey II, 2024.
Audrey II, 2024, take over the world, eat Congress.
Mm-hmm.
There we go.
Uh, Audrey II's running mate could be Freddy Krueger. Audrey II and Freddy Krueger, let's go!
Let's go. Audrey II, Little Shop of Horror sponsored nihilism.
So, do you have a favorite moment from the movie or musical? Not necessarily a musical moment.
This is kind of a smaller moment, I guess, but I think it's really funny when Audrey has just been eaten, Seymour is dead, and the dude that had come by before to get Seymour's signature to come pick up Audrey II to do this big business deal comes by. He has no idea what happened. He just comes back into the shop and is like, all right, load them up, boys. Like, he has no idea what he's getting himself into. I think that that moment is really tiny, but it's like really funny to me.
I love that. I want to talk about the movie for a second. There's a song that was written just for the movie. So it's not in the off-Broadway production.
Okay.
So I don't think you guys would have played it, but it's called Mean Green Mother from Outer Space.
Yeah, we didn't play that one. I remember noticing that. I was like, what is this?
That song's a banger. It
It
was
is.
made just for the movie. I don't think any productions do it.
Yeah, I don't remember playing it. I could be wrong, but I didn't recognize it.
Well, that might be like legal issues because like that song might be owned by Warner Brothers. So
Hmm, true.
so I don't think like Enter High School Name here is gonna want to try and do a song they could get suit out of Oblivion for.
Yeah.
But that song rocks
Yeah. That's a good one.
because they wanted to make an exclusive song for the movie just for like so fans of the show had something they could, you know, something new to see and like something they could potentially get nominated for an Oscar for, which it did.
Yes.
Got
Hmm.
an Oscar nomination for that song. And I'm just really glad that the extra song was an Audrey II song.
Hmm. Yeah. I think that was really cool that a monster movie got a nomination like that. And it was the Monsters song in general. I thought that was so
Right.
cool.
And
Also,
it's a, yeah.
this whole thing, like thinking about it from like the rock perspective too, like the Pink Floyd rock opera
Mhm.
is like very different and like much more serious, but also like just kind of thinking about it in this way. I'm like, oh yeah, there's like a lot of parallels with how they made this.
Yeah, I like that. It's very Little Shop of Horrors is very both musically and in spirit very rock and roll. I think we talked at length how much we like the scrappy nature of it. Yeah, it's a show I very much enjoy. I love, love, love Audrey II. Audrey II is one of my favorite monsters. I think she's so cool. I do have a question for you though.
Yeah.
If you were walking down Skid Row and you walk by your favorite plant shop and you don't see anything out of the ordinary, but then there's a solar eclipse. And then the solar eclipse goes, and then you see back to your favorite plant shop, and there's this brand new plant you never seen before. And so you take it home and it's dying and you don't know what to do and you accidentally prick yourself and then oh no it ate some of your blood and you just decide you find oh okay it feeds on blood so you're gonna feed it what you can a little bit and you name it after your crush. I don't know, Audrey, so it's called Audrey II. All this to say, if you were in the vicinity of Audrey II, would you die?
If it was the original ending where the aliens took over the world, absolutely. Yes.
Just because
All
everyone
shall
would
perish.
die?
Yeah, all shall perish. What do you
But
mean?
what? Okay, but what about you specifically and Audrey too?
Would I die like Audrey one? No. But like I some of it is just, you have to suspend your belief because I would not want to walk into a room with a plant that big, just in general. Like when she comes back over because Audrey calls her,
Mhm.
she just kind of walks in. She's like, "Oh, I'll get you some water." I'm like, "No survival instincts whatsoever." Like, if I was in the same room as Audrey too, probably yes, I would die. But I would not lean over into the plant to check what's going on, like
Okay.
Mushnick.
Yeah, you wouldn't Mr. Mushnick it, but Audrey two's got some tricks that
True,
she could do.
that's very true.
So I agree. I don't think I would willingly put my upper half of my body into the mouth of the carnivorous looking plant.
A plant that has teeth, yeah,
But that doesn't mean Audrey 2 can't outsmart me. He probably can.
same, yeah. Especially since they're like the multiple tendrils and everything, like could get me probably.
And it's very persuasive.
True.
I mean, it's thinking about the song Feed Me.
Mhm.
Uh, how would you like a room at the Ritz? Yeah, sure, I'd like it. Look, what do you want me to do, Audrey 2?
Right.
Like a date with Petty Lamar? I better get it.
Feed me.
Feed me. I love it. I love it so much. That's my favorite part of the whole musical. When it's because it's very like Little Shop of Horrors is very Faustian, right? It's basically a fun twist on the classic deal with the devil
True.
story.
Very
And
true.
Audrey II is the devil.
Hmm.
Because Seymour's getting everything he wants.
Yeah.
Wealth, fame, the girl, you
Go
know.
girl. Hmm.
So so it is very Faustian in that sense.
True.
But I just think Audrey II is a much better singer than the devil.
True. Well, we don't know that.
We don't know that. That's true. We don't
I've
know
heard
that at all.
I've heard he's a pretty good fiddle player, though.
And there's a kid down in Georgia who would beg to differ.
You're right.
So thank you so much for joining me today for talking musical and horror and Little Shop of Horrors and AI with me.
Anytime.
Where can the people find you should you want to be found?
I have an Instagram, Shannon Sheldrick, just at Shannon Sheldrick. I just kind of post pictures of my gigs up there. I will have a website in a couple weeks, but it'll probably just be shannonsheldrickmusic.com. But yeah, if you need lessons or need a trumpet player or just need a musician to chit chat with, let me know.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining the show today.
Yeah, good to see you.
Thank you for listening to today's episode. Thank you, Shannon, for joining me today and talking all about Little Shop of Horrors with me. If you like this show or my other horror endeavors, then I recommend subscribing to my Patreon. I retooled it so it is only $3 a month, and you'll get exclusive content, movie reviews, and extended episodes while supporting my art and content directly. If you haven't already, subscribe to the Would You Die YouTube channel. There you can watch video versions of the podcast episodes, my short film Ice Scream, the brand new show Spooky Spotlight with host Deanna Hope, and more to come. If you like this show, please let me know. Leave a review and rate on Spotify or Apple or wherever you listen to this show. Also, feel free to interact with me on social media, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, wherever you're most comfortable. It may not seem like a lot, but trust me, every single like, share, comment, follow, all of that helps this podcast to grow and helps keep me going. You can find the show's social media on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram at Would You Die Show, and you can also follow me on TikTok at Would You Die Podcast. Would You Die is a partner with the Three Wise Men Media, a Metro Detroit-based group of awesome guys, Kyle, Tyler, and Dylan, where they bring you professional wrestling, indie comic books, and so much more. The music you hear in the beginning and end of each episode is composed by my friend Josie Palmer. Next week is TBD. I don't know, guys. I'm making all this up as I go. Until next time, I'm Austin Torres. Try not to die.